Greetings, everyone. It's Keelani with Civics for the Soul and Between the Vote. Listen, there's a lot going on in our country right now, and I have a lot of thoughts. I have a million thoughts about everything. I have thoughts about what's happening in Minneapolis with the executions of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. I have thoughts about the funding and the debate about whether we should continue to fund these paramilitary forces in DC. The fight in the Georgia legislature, there's been an introduction of 4 different bills to try to limit the authority of ICE. I have thoughts about the raid on the Fulton County Elections Board and the retrieval of documents from 2020 to discuss a prior election, but more importantly, what this means and the exposure of people's data for the future elections. I have concerns about that. I have thoughts about how I told everyone that whether someone is loyal to the Constitution and whether they believe in the Constitution should be a threshold matter for anyone who's running for office. And now we're seeing the effects of what happens when you don't make it a threshold issue. I have thoughts about when I told the Black community that we needed to take a step back in this moment. I did not say take a vacation and go on holiday from the freedom struggle. I did not say that. But I did tell everyone that we need to take a step back and allow everyone else to go through the recognition phase. And so what you're hearing is a lot of people saying, I don't recognize my country. I never believed that we'd be in this position. I can't believe what I'm seeing. That's what we call the recognition phase. That's actually a good thing. I'm glad that people are arriving. So now we can work together to resist. I have thoughts about fascism and how it needs fear and intimidation and speed and capitulation to work. I have thoughts on how you set up an authoritarian regime. I think Stacey Abrams does a good job of outlining those 10 steps of autocracy. I have thoughts on the attack on the press under the First Amendment and what that means. Somehow they were able to arrest Don Lemon, I think Trahim Cruz, Jamel Lindell Lundy, and Georgia Ford. They always have time to arrest Black journalists. Anyway, okay. I have thoughts on all of that, but I have very limited time to talk about this. So in these types of moments, this is what I do. I try to focus on the organizing story. You know, what's the organizing story behind all of these moments and these movements that we're seeing? That's what's most important. How are people getting themselves together? How are they organizing themselves? What are the steps that they did to do it? How do they resist? And how do they keep their families safe? That's the organizing story. So I'm going to talk about that. So when I talk about the organizing story, there are at least 2 types, of organizing that we normally see. We have one that is typically done by the masses. That's your situational organizing. That's your rapid response. You're doing things in response to immediate threats and immediate harm to your community. It's done by people on the ground. It's grassroots organizations or just communities coming together and mutual aid networks. That's situational organizing, and it's very important in this moment. The other type of organizing is what we call the deep strategic organizing, and that's the sort of long-term organizing that takes place over decades even. So what I'm encouraged by is that we're seeing a lot of situational organizing on the ground. You're seeing folks who are delivering meals to their to other families who are afraid to leave out. You see folks delivering medical supplies. You see all kinds of people, particularly in Minneapolis, but everywhere. I've seen it in every city where people come out and they get their phones out and they say, we're going to, at the very least, we're going to be observers. We're going to record what's happening. And in moments of fascist movement and the establishment of authoritarian regimes, it's important that we rely on us. It's important that we rely on our networks. So if there's anything that I could say that we can do in this moment, and here's the action point. I want each and every person to become affiliated with or join or support some type of mutual aid network. What does that look like? If you're a nurse, that's just trying to supply, medical supplies, masks or, just some type of supplies that can help others. There's all kinds of groups who are doing that. Food. If all you have is just a little bit of money or change, or if you have some food in your home, join those networks that are trying to make sure that everyone is well fed and has what they need. If it's education, if you're a teacher or you just teach, right? You should join those online networks that are trying to educate students who are afraid to go to school. There's a huge problem, particularly here in Georgia, up in Gwinnett County, where students are just afraid to go to school. And so join those networks where you can do some of that online learning. If you're a lawyer, become a legal observer. There's all kinds of groups out there like that. If you're former law enforcement, then there's self-defense trainings that you can be providing to the community. The most important thing, I think, is making sure that you have some type of communication channel for your immediate network, making sure that people know how to get to you. A lot of our barber shops and our beauty salons do that work too. They serve as these communication hubs, but just in your community chat groups, there has to be a way that we can find ways to communicate with one another. I saw that in Minneapolis, they have all of the folks, anytime you see a paramilitary force coming down the street, they all use their key fobs and they set off the alarms on their cars. And that's to let everybody know what's happening. I think that's a brilliant thing to do. So if there's any action plan that I can think of right now, it is for everyone to just join some type of mutual aid network. That is something that you can do. That is something that is impactful. So please do that. The second part of, the second type of organizing, that's that long-term strategic organizing. That's the art of war, Underground Railroad. We don't talk about Bruno type of organizing that some folks are involved in. It takes place over years and it requires those folks with very special skills. So what do I want you to know about that type of organizing? So it's not for everyone. And I'm gonna be honest with you. A lot of y'all are not going to be invited to those spaces because y'all talk too much. And this is not a time for us to talk too much and advertise everything that we're doing and advertise what type of resistance measures we're doing. So some of y'all not going to be invited because y'all talk too much. There was a sister online, and it's hilarious. I hope y'all can find it. But she's talking to the Black community in particular. She says, Black people, we need to, and then and you also know. So by the end, we can, that's the type of communication we need to be doing right now. We need to be very careful, very strategic. But not everybody's going to be involved in that. What I would say, if I could share something from that perspective, I need everyone to disavow yourself of the belief that somehow we are going to avoid being harmed. Disavow yourself of that belief that in the midst of everything that we're seeing, the fall of the empire, that we're going to avoid being harmed, that we're going to avoid getting hurt, that somehow we can try to get safety. I'm seeing a whole lot of people who feel like they can negotiate with fascists, that you can pacify fascists. You cannot do that. There's only one way out of this. And the way that we get out of this is together. We can get out of this together, but disavow yourself that we are going to leave out of it unharmed and unscathed. That's not how this works. And as much as we tell people, we're telling people, we know your rights, and I do. I want you to know your rights. You got to give yourselves a fighting chance, your community a fighting chance. Know your rights, record the truth, have your citizenship papers on you. I mean, you can try. I don't know how much that's going to matter, but by all means, do whatever you feel you should do to try to mitigate your harm. Tell the people that you're a citizen. Even those folks who are out there, I'm indigenous to this land. This is not our fight. We don't have anything to do with it. You can do all those things, but you are not going to get out of this without some type of harm. And we're not going to get out of this unscathed. So you can disavow yourself of that. You can try as you might. Do whatever you feel you need to do. But it doesn't work like that. We're not going to get out of this without having to resist, without having to fight. And we're not going to get out of this without being harmed by someone. So, at the end of the day, it's not going to stop any of them from arresting us. It's not going to stop people from necessarily dragging us out of our cars, slamming our heads on the pavement, kidnapping us, trafficking us. It's not really going to stop that, not immediately. But together, if we work together and we resist together, that's the only way that we can get out of this. How do you, trying to think of the next step for us. If there's anything that I could say that we could do is we have to plan for the inevitable. And what do I mean by that? You have to plan for the harm that you're going to experience. You can't think that you're just going to come up with a plan and then somehow you're going to avoid what's happening out there in the street. That's not how this works. So you have to plan for the inevitable. And it's inevitable based on what we've seen historically happen to different communities. And I know that this type of harm is unprecedented in terms of some communities think that it's unprecedented. But for those of us who are Black and Native American and other communities of color, we know that it's not. So plan for the inevitable. And the key is to rely on your own readiness. I think that's where we keep talking about, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. That's where that comes from. Rely on your own readiness. Do not rely on the hope that your enemy is not going to harm you. I think that's where we've got to get our minds together. Plan for your own readiness and rely on that, right? So in the instance where you have some type of encounter with some paramilitary force, you'll know what to do. I think we saw that best when we saw what happened to Georgia Ford, who is the journalist up in Minneapolis. So she comes to her door. She does all the things we tell them to do, demand a warrant. I think she's also a lawyer. So she demands, like, you need to show some type of warrant. They don't do it. She calls her counsel as well to figure out what she should do. I don't know if she's a lawyer. She might be. I don't know. But she calls counsel and they advise her, you need to go ahead and comply while we sort of figure out what this is. And then she goes in. She has people who know where she is, people who have followed her there. She has recorded herself the whole time when she's taken into custody. And then she lets her legal team do that work. The reason why you do that, you have to plan for that inevitability and rely on your own readiness, is so that at the very least we can control what happens to us even in those dangerous moments. So that was sort of like a testament to what happens when you do that type of long-range planning and you have your contingency plans in place. That's what you saw with the Civil Rights Movement. They planned for everything. They planned for what would happen when they did a sit-in. They planned for the violence that they would experience. They would practice it. They planned for what would happen when they're arrested. They knew that they had a legal team behind them. They had people who were sort of watching where they took them. They knew that they would have somebody behind the scenes who was funding their bail. They had to plan for everything. Last thought. My son asked me, Mom, what should I do if ICE surrounds the car as I'm out driving? And I told him, I said, well, here's the thing. Whenever you leave a place, one, you let me know when you're leaving so that I can track you. I need to know where you are. I said, always have your phone ready and set on record so that you can record at any moment. I told him, I said, look, if someone surrounds you, I need you to start treat it like that movie Taken, where the father tells her, you need to tell me everything that you see. Record it. Tell me everything that you see, everything you're watching. Tell me where you are. I said, send me that quick video and then continue to record after that. I said, don't capitulate. Don't capitulate. Don't just get out of the car, because people will think that it's okay for you to be going with them. You need someone in the community, in the vicinity, to know that you are not going with consent. You need someone to sort of in the community to help out to start recording as well. I said, they may bust your window. Let them. Cover your eyes. I said, they may drag you out of the car. Let them. You can tell them that you are a citizen. That may or may not work. And then I begin to tell them, if they take you into custody, there's some things that he and I can do. You go into a deep state of meditation, and you wait for me to show up. And I had to walk him through all of those things. It's unfortunate that we have to get to that point, but I think I would be remiss if I was not honest with everyone and telling you what we're up against and what we have to do. And I'm trying to speak to everyone honestly and truthfully. We have to plan for the inevitable. But what I know for sure is that collectively, we can get out of this. If I look at how history has progressed over the centuries, they don't win. They don't. There's no way you can win. It's too much blood in the ground. Can't win. But we get out of this. We get out of this collectively, not individually. Not by trying to negotiate and pacify fascists. We just stay true to what we know. Build with one another. Try to find safety in one another. And we will survive. I don't know that we'll be completely all right, but we will survive. So take some encouragement in that, because there are many, many people who have come before us who have had to do the same thing. They survived, and we persevere. So hope that's something. I have a lot more to say, but I will probably never get around to saying it. So peace and love to everyone. If you need anything, just let me know. Peace and love.